Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Multichain event panel over here. We're going to be speaking about dev tools, SDKs, APIs, and all that good stuff. We got a bunch of industry leaders over here to speak on this. So, without further ado, why don't we do some quick intros across the room? I'll start off over here. I'm Nero. I'm the moderator for this panel. I'm the CEO and founder of MCA Multichain Advisors. And I also go by Crypto Ape on Twitter. I'm a weekly podcast host and, internet personality.
Hi, my name is Anthony. I'm the CEO and founder at Lucid. We're building a unified liquidity layer for the industry, which I'll dive to a little bit later. But originally London, living in Barcelona, happy to be here.
I'm Jonathan. I'm a director of engineering at Dune. I lead the data function across product and engineering. And for those who don't know Dune, we're the biggest data platform for crypto out there. Building with a community with 110 plus of chains, and lately also been building a whole bunch of APIs to make sure that we can be available for everyone across a whole bunch of chains, which I think is the subject for today.
Hey, I'm Oscar. I'm from Alchemy. We're a developer tooling platform for engineers based in New York. Been with Alchemy for a little bit over 2.5 years, and excited to be here with everyone.
Hi, I'm Jack I lead growth at RouteScan. We are a unified multi-chain block explorer. We currently support more than 90, 100 chains between mainnet and testnet. And we are like the alternative to EthCC, cheaper, faster, and better.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So as you guys are B2B, products and infrastructure products, you guys work with a lot of different chains. How are you guys able to stay multi-chain and compete on a multi-chain scale, taking into consideration the differences from every blockchain on a factor of speed, data availability, and just language?
Yeah, so in our case, we're trying to unify all of the bridging solutions because obviously the bridges exist to solve fragmentation across ecosystems, but they themselves are fragmented. If you're choosing layer 0, you can't use CCIP. If you're choosing CCIP, you can't use Hyperlane. For us, this doesn't make any sense. So we found a way to unify all the bridges. So you can choose any token standard, whether it's OFT from layer 0, NTT from Wormhole, the normal ERC20, and you can have that token active across every major bridge simultaneously. You don't have to do any development, just sign one multi-sig transaction and you go live. And so in our case, it's actually pretty simple to allow this level of connectivity because we're outsourcing all of that initial development to the bridges themselves. Once they made that connection, we import it into Lucid. We allow all of those bridges to work simultaneously, removing all of the need for engineering work and finally building a unified liquidity layer for the space.
No engineering work. I'm going to be out of a job soon, it seems. Now, I think a lot of things, as I said, we have over 110 blockchains on doing it. We certainly see fair share of challenges there. An analogy I like using is, how wide and deep you can be. So you can be either like a 1 inch wide and like a mile deep, or you can try to be a mile wide and an inch deep. And what I mean by that is, sure, you can find, as you think about multi-chain on the data side for us, you can find some common standards to try and model the data. And if you're looking at EVM chains or P stacks, you'll get like your same types of model, and that's kind of easy-ish. But then the further you dig, the deeper you want to go, then you'll find all those intricacies. And so then the question becomes, okay, how much do you want to bubble that up? And when it comes to to the speed side, we recently launched a collection of APIs called SIM API, and where we do multi-chain balances over 60 chains. And the problem is, well, we want this API to be fast, but not all chains are going to reply at the different, with the same speed. And so if you give balances for 60 chains, for example, what are you going to do? Like, do you respond as slow as the slowest chain? And then customers might think, okay, this is slow, or do you just like omit data because it's too slow, and then they'll think, okay, there's data missing. And so I think it's about exposing those challenges back to the user a little bit so that you give them the choice. So what we've decided to do is say, okay, you can decide to wait for everything and get the data for all the chains, or you can decide that you don't want to wait and you're going to handpick the ones that you want to get data for because they're going to reply the fastest just due to block time simply.
So at Alchemy, we believe that teams need to spend time building their actual products and not focusing on managing the backend infrastructure as much as they used to a couple of years ago. Back in 2017 bull run, a lot of teams were managing their own nodes or working with older node services, and that came with a headache of problems. First of all, nodes being stateless on a global decentralized ledger, they're often acting independently, and so when you're working across a load balancer, you're going to be retrieving different results. Now, scale that out across multiple different blockchains, handling different clients, reorgs, and it becomes a lot of a headache. So at Alchemy, we started primarily on Ethereum, but we quickly realized that teams really want to go all in on multi-chain. So what we've done was we took our Supernode core RPC infrastructure. This is really where a lot of the developers start on Alchemy and branch out to a lot of our different offerings. And they just get started with our core RPCs. But we've realized that there are other needs that they have. So we've been able to, on top of that Supernode fleet, we've also indexed entire blockchain histories and formed new data APIs to streamline data retrieval and to make it a lot more accessible for developers. And we've also unified a lot of the language for teams across different blockchain networks, primarily in the EVM. And this has been a big way for us to be able to introduce a lot of really strong terms for our teams, such as like having 99.99% uptime and really low global latency across different parts of the world. And so because of that, it's been a huge reason why we've been able to scale from just Ethereum to north of 80 different blockchain networks, and something that we're continuously looking to improve every day.
Um, so I believe here we have like all the components of like what it takes to like build a multi-chain infrastructure, because we have only the data, when we have only the backend part, we have the bridging layer, and I believe we're kind of front end of the whole. So as much of the multi-chain, multi-chain stuff, and how we try to unify everything. So I believe I can like answer to like continue follow up for everyone, because we unify all the cross transactions on the Explorer because we support layer 0. We're going to support Li-Fi. We're supporting like Avalanche messaging protocol. We're going to support IBC eventually. So we're trying to make so that everyone can simply trace transaction cross chain as they happen and not like just go through multiple explorers. This is our value proposition as being a unified Explorer. And then we also, of course, as a block explorer, we have tons of data, and we need to, of course, index them, and we need to, of course, provide a subset of, for example, what Dune provides of like ERC20 transfers and transfers for address and top transfers and top NFTs, top mints, and so on. And also we need to have a lot of RPCs. We need to manage a lot of clusters to have everything, in real time. And to follow up on the thing about being the chain with the slowest, response time being the bottleneck, it actually is a really big issue, because of course, if you need to fetch the info directly from the node, it's going to be a bottleneck. So that's why we try to prefetch everything, run into our indexes, and then make it possible so that everyone can just like fetch it in a few seconds. But still, we try to do even more than that, because we have full history of everything. Like if you want to go to the Binance hot wallet address on multi-chain, meaning that it will be on all the chains that Binance supports except BNB, which we don't support right now. But you can go down and you can like fetch millions of pages of transactions if you want. Of course, why would you want it? But we still provide it because some people like, on-chain sleuth like, ZachXBT would love that. And so I believe there's, as part of unifying the multi-chain, I believe there's just one thing that needs to be still answered, and it's like, how do you unify different VM types? That is the really big hurdle, because I'm like, we have been asking a lot about like indexing new ecosystems, like completely different new ecosystems, Polkadot, Cosmos, Solana, even like completely exotic VMs. But the thing is, one, it costs a lot of money, and that's a different thing. And two, like, how do you unify it? Like, do you build another explorer, but like, won't that just like a little bit lose the sense of being unified multi-chain? So I believe that's the single biggest thing that we're finding out. Like, how do you unify at the different VM level? Or of course, and also, how do you unify at a different transaction models level? Like, we have some UTXO chains that are the need to collide with transaction model chains. How do you do that?
I feel you.
Yes, I know. I know.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, that's a good point. Like, we still don't have like a quote unquote like uniform explorer, which is just one part of this equation. So
And this is because everyone wants to do their own thing, be optimized.
it's a business for everything.
Yeah.
But I guess as you guys are building, APIs and SDKs, how do you guys balance between building for solo developers versus like bigger institutional players?
So in the case of Lucid, we actually took the approach of building a no-code platform first because we really wanted people to understand the value proposition. And humans are inherently visual, like they take in data very visually. And so being able to show the benefits of having like a 2 out of 3 multi-sig of bridges. So traditionally, if you send a mint message across a bridge, that mint message can be tainted, it can be corrupted, and that can compromise not only the assets of the person, but it can also compromise the integrity of the protocol. And so on top of this unified liquidity layer, we allow you to stack multiple bridges into the same transaction, essentially building a multi-sig of bridges, where let's say instead of sending the message through 1, you send it through 3, and 2 out of 3 have to agree everything is safe for that transaction to execute. So that increases your bridge security by orders of magnitude. And while it sounds great, people tend not to really understand the value prop until we show them in a nice, clean UI. And then they understand, oh, wow, this is obviously where the multi-chain ecosystem should be going, because now the fees are trending towards 0 and latency is decreasing rapidly. Why wouldn't you stack multiple bridges into the same transaction? And so we took the initiative to go a no code first, but we will be launching our SDK in the next few weeks. And that's when we plan to integrate with traditional foundations or applications. But we're also in talks with major institutions. The likes of JP Morgan are very interested in an interop solution like this because they need assurances when they're moving like hundreds of millions of dollars. They need to have the minimum viable centralization. And I think this is a great solution for something like that.
I think it's really a spectrum of things when you go from solo developer and to all the way to insto, but there's also like the growth of that solo developer. And I think what we've been seeing here is the question of, first off, reasoning about a free tier, and like, we want to enable the developer community. And so if you have to go and fill in like 50 forms before you can try the product, that's you need to think about that in the first place so people get a touch of your product. And as they scale, then what we typically see with customers is the more institutional a player is, the more questions they're going to start asking, both on the engineering side, but also like on the compliance side. So when you think about an API, the more the usage is going to scale, then customers will tend to reason about peak usage, burst, and what's the reliability. If you're developing, if you see your first distributed app and you can do a couple of requests per second every once in a while, then like things are fine. But then like the expectations in terms of reliability and like the stability of your response times, the expectations are going to be increasingly harder to meet. The last thing as well, I think there's also a notion of coverage. Like the biggest player, like the biggest the customer, they don't want to shop around and talk to like 50 different providers. Turns out that today this is probably what it looks like for a lot of customers, but a solo developer will be fine going in the, I guess, developer API and tooling trenches and try to make do. But if you talk to JP Morgan, they're not going to use like 40 crypto data APIs. Like they just want 1 or maybe 2. And so then your coverage becomes a lot more important, I would say.
I think Alchemy has done a very good job of appealing to both the solo developers and the larger institutional teams. And there's a few reasons why we did that. We mapped out the entire journey of where these users are coming from, why they're choosing to use Alchemy and how they grow as a business. And we've made our product extremely friendly for all different tiers of teams to get started with us. First of all, it takes less than 5 minutes to sign up for an account and get started using us. We invested in an education platform and created Alchemy University, which helps educate developers how to leverage our APIs, but also start building smart contracts and using our different tools to do so. And even now, this is something where I meet new developers that walk up to me and they tell me that they learned how to code or how to build applications through Alchemy University. But then as teams start to scale out, they're going to need more attention from us. And it's something that Alchemy is proud to say that we've been very successful and have accomplished a lot of big things with different teams. So, for example, I'm sure all of you are very familiar with Polymarket, one of the teams to have really found a strong product market fit using cryptocurrency. They were using Alchemy, and during the night of the election, they saw a surge of multiple millions of users onto their platform. And we had dedicated what we call a war room of multiple engineers on our team that were up online, communicating with them in real time throughout the entire course of the election. And as a result, Polymarket was able to reach consensus on the results of the election before any major news outlet. And Alchemy is really proud to have been uh, intertwined with them during that experience.
Can you actually repeat the question because everyone is doing their own thing, but I would like to, yeah. Can you repeat the question because I think I've lost it. I was so,
Yeah. I guess in terms of like when you guys are building like
solo developers.
yeah, exactly. Like how do you guys balance between like solo developers and bigger institutions and companies?
So solo developers for us are a treasure. We try to treat them really good if we can. Like, of course, we have a free tier, like up to 2 requests per second, up to I think 10,000 calls per day. But we also have a hidden, let's say, incentive, meaning that if since we are we're not just a block explorer, but more of a data platform because we have multi-chain APIs and so on. We incentivize developers by providing them free APIs to whatever tier they have if they build what we call route scan extensions, meaning you are building something that is using our APIs in some weird way. So we'll give you free APIs just if you credit us, and that's how we try to help sole developers try. I don't know, maybe it's not even to make a business out of it, but just to make themselves out, in the open. And for institution, I believe we have right now, and this is part of my hot take later. We don't have much traction with the institution, as to be honest. M- Mostly because EthCC is the one that is most viewed as a institutional player for that. Of course, we're trying to change that. You know, um, one step at a time. But I'm acknowledging this, and it's not good, but it's fair. But we're seeing a lot of traction for the extensions, like sole developers or little teams that want to build on top of our APIs and make some use cases. And we try to also have this influence our API development plans. Like if you're a sole developer and you're like, yeah, I want to have the latest mints and latest transfers for tokens, but I'm really missing this thing. Like I'm really missing this filter or this other thing. We try to build that for you and just try to be a community driven in this sense. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, you guys answered all that, very detailed. So appreciate it. We can jump to the next question. So obviously, this is a multi-chain day conference over here. You guys are all building multi-chain. Would you guys be able to share where most of your guys' customers are coming from when it comes to specific changes or specific chains? Any trends you guys have seen recently? Any insights you can share with the audience?
Yeah, so in our particular case, we launched V1 of the multi-bridge about 3 months ago, and we've got some really good traction now. We've done like $5 million in volume, and it's ramping up quite quickly. We actually started moving more into the liquidity management side as well, because if you're opening up all these bridge routes for your tokens, then you need liquidity on those destination chains inside of a DEX. Otherwise, they're completely useless. So we paired together the bridge solution with this liquidity manager, and we found incredible amounts of traction with that. So we just launched with the Peak ecosystem. Every time that we launch these vested emission offerings, we're selling out. And we think that this is going to be a big trend in the multi-chain space, which is that, yes, you want interconnectivity, but you also need deep and sustainable liquidity. And these are two sides of the same coin. If you have one without the other, then your protocol is basically screwed. And so we see this as like a big trend, like the move away from liquidity mining programs, which are great on paper for the short term, but provide very little value in the medium to long term. We think there's a lot of awareness about this coming into the space right now, and we're trying to position ourselves as a viable alternative because previously there really wasn't one. And yeah, I think that's like a big trend in the space.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Do you know what? I'm allow myself to be a little bit cheeky and skip my turn for now and hand it over to Giacomo so he can't say he forgot the question.
No. No, okay, thank you. But yes, no, the trend I was actually so from last year, we had, and this is like a little bit of a background. So from last year, we were really like trying to understand how many chains there were, like how to target most chains and so on. And so we built a really huge database of more than 4,000 chains. Like, would you believe that there are more 4,000 chains? No, actually, there are not. There are 4,000 chains like by name, and then we actually filtered them out to about 1,900. And we try to categorize them, like which rollup are they using, which VMs are they using, and so on. And eventually we released a byproduct of this effort of business intelligence that is call it the state of the market report. And it's basically a 30-60 page report about everything that's going on, about everything that developers choose to use. It's not about user activity, it's about developers. So like how many developers are choosing to use this chain or this technology or whatever. And so we found out actually that EVM dominance is slowly decreasing a little bit. It's decreasing versus ZKVM, of course. So vanilla EVM is not like the it's always the major, but it's not as big as it was before. And also other types of VM, like I don't know. Of course, we have Solana, but Aptos Sui, but also like Namara, and also we have an emergence in different, like in China, Polkadot is really strong. I don't know why, but seems really strong. And Cosmos, and there's a really good, like when I ask developers like, why are you choosing like to build on Cosmos and maybe have like a Cosmosm plus EVM chain? Because like, yeah, because the consensus mechanism is so flexible that I can really, if I need to have a lot of governance on my chain, that is going to really help me a lot in in making this flexible and really enforcing on-chain governance versus on a like vanilla EVM chain like a rollup. Rollup is like completely inexistent governance. So yeah, that's what we found out, and this is like the trends. One of the trends that I'm seeing is EVM is still strong, but there's a lot of chains that are trying to move away in different ways, and then maybe having like a EVM compatible side in some way, but trying to make something new.
All right. I think from my side, I would say that what has continuously impressed me over the last year or so has been the base ecosystem. And I know people have been vocal that this is a Coinbase corporate chain and et cetera, but you have to look at the figures and like the activity and the TVL, and like it's consistently pushing. And the base team has been like quite close to developers and builders and trying to encourage like use cases and apps. And so I've been pretty impressed. And so yes, this might sound vanilla, it's EVM, but I think it's got this kind of traction.
Yeah.
At Alchemy, we bring in developers in two different ways. We have the existing users, over 1 million developers that are actively signed up for an account with us, using us for whether it's starting off with Ethereum or a different network and then branching out to multiple different ones. But we also have a really deep partnership with a lot of these new networks that get started, and they want to choose to partner with a team like Alchemy. And as a result of that type of partnership, they're also bringing in their deeply embedded ecosystem and encouraging them to choose Alchemy because of the deeper relationship that we formed. We've been seeing a lot of really positive growth in this type of motion from the teams at Monad. They have a remarkable group of developers, and we're seeing a ton of growth there. But there's also some other ones that I find really intriguing. For example, one network that's been super interesting to grow has been Hyperliquid. When you're looking at it just from like perp side, they're growing and taking up a very large market share. But as they roll out Hyper EVM, there's not a lot of really solid tooling for teams to get started. And a lot of the developers that are already using Alchemy have been asking us to give them access to it. And so that was been one signal for us to start going into this new ecosystem. But then you also look at the teams that are embedded purely in Hyper EVM as well. And that's another metric that we use for growth and to pick up on a trend of where are these networks that are really worth investing into, where we see the developer demands increasing. So we're always looking at it from both ends of where are users currently and what are these ecosystems that come to us and have such a large and strong community that's backing them.
Yeah, Hyperliquid is a sinkhole. It's billions of transactions. There's little infra because they don't want to pay anyone to provide infra. There's little community support because it's going to cost a lot of money to to provide that support. And so I'm not even talking about Hyper EVM because Hyper EVM is still doable, but the core, it's Rust was closed source until 3 months ago, and now what? Like magically, everyone will freely spin up nodes and everything. But that's another thing. That's another hot take, I believe.
And I think it's time we can get into some of the hot takes over here, since we've already started with that. So I can start off with the hot take. I think blockchain infrastructure is going to continue to take kind of like a behind the scenes position for future products and apps in the Web3 space, especially if we're going to eventually get some breakout apps that will go mainstream.
Someone else want to start?
My hot take would be that we have ever more blockchains, ever more use cases, and we're still roughly doing the same things on the data side and talking about RPCs. And I think it's we've been like for so many years content with RPC, and we need to go beyond that. We need to go closer to the execution and be part of the execution layer, because developers might build smart contract in a way, and maybe they don't emit events, and maybe you can't get any data out. And we've been like, and we've been stuck with this. And I think, it's the duty of infrastructure providers and data providers to just go deeper than that and insert themselves into the execution environment to extract the data that the community and developers deserve, regardless of what RPC exposes.
I think that assets across all chains are going to become more unified beyond wrapped tokens, bridge tokens. I think we're going to see a huge emergence in this space over the next year.
My hot take is, following up from what I was saying before, is that there's little knowledge about how things work. Like, I don't know if you saw, there's like this new meta about, revenue, like chains and dApps having revenue. Wow, that's so good. Chains are now have revenue. But the thing is, chains should be businesses. Everything should be businesses. So everything should have revenue and they should spend less than they have of revenue, so that they have operating profits. Like, this does not feel like science to me. And still we are, I don't know how to say, like surprised by revenue. Hyperliquid do a lot of revenue and so on. And so it is really, really hard most of the times to make chains ecosystems understand that they need to pay in some way. Like we usually get charged. We usually charge chains, but we're like, you don't need to pay us directly, but at least give us a way. And one way is like, please remove sometimes Etherscan from the equation. Because for us as a block explorer, Etherscan is really like elephant in the room. If Etherscan is the block explorer, there's no traffic and nothing for anyone else. And of course, there's no job for us. We have a small traction in some like markets, let's say chains where Etherscan is, but it's still small because Etherscan is the primary one, and no one gives a about us. So it's even if though they pay us because there's the fact of not having a single point of failure, and this is important. The fact is that everyone should be given a fair chance of competition, and in some markets like Oracle's, Block Explorers, and some others, there's not. This is my outtake.
Yeah, so I second that motion, just saying that business fundamentals, taking more revenue than you have in cost is something that needs to be implemented in the space. And I think with the kind of VC drought that we're starting to experience, that's going to become more and more obvious. But my personal hot take is we've had enough of the L2s. Let's focus on app chains if we are going to add more chains at all. I think it's kind of a waste to have to repopulate all these DeFi ecosystems again and again and again and again. And it just doesn't make sense. I think it makes much more sense to have the hub and spoke model with app chains, where you have like centralized liquidity on like an L2, and then you can dip in and out of it through seamless bridging, which we can provide. But yeah, I think we have enough L2s for a lifetime. So I think it's enough. Like, let's focus on app chains, let's scale what we have already. And yeah, the infrastructure is nearly there.
Awesome. Well, folks, we are at time over here. So appreciate it. Thanks again for your time. And this was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.